Crash Bandicoot!
What's up internet people, it's your boy Durs, and we're back with another Shed review. Thank you guys for supporting the channel so much lately, we really appreciate it, and I'm super excited to be bringing y'all this video. I've had an absolute blast with this game, and I figured that it would just be really cool to talk about it. So let's see what's up with Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. Crash Bandicoot 4 is the first new game to the series in 12 years, if you don't include the Insane Trilogy, which for the sake of this video, we won't because it was really just remasters. When Crash Bandicoot hit the scene in 1996, it was clear who PlayStation and Naughty Dog were trying to bring the heat to with its new 3D platformer.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived. Pack up your stuff!
In which our mutated little friend here, Crash, was on a quest to stop Dr. Neocortex from performing his evil experiments and trying to dominate the world, but also to save our girlfriend Tana. Hugely successful, it has a slew of games come out after it, but the original 3 games by Naughty Dog have long been considered to sit high above the rest. But it's 2020. What is Crash 4 bringing to the table today? Why is it even called 4, even though there's been about like 12 games after Warped? Is it any good? And do we even care about Crash anymore? Well, I was curious to find out these answers, so I picked up this title on launch day and have been playing it ever since. Now I feel like I'm ready to share what I think about this game with you guys, so let's jump in. To start things off right, we're going to look at the visuals of Crash 4, and I'm going to preface this section by saying I personally love the way it looks, and its new updated graphics keep all of the charm of the original trilogy and just turn it up. If you take any time at all to just sit and look at this game, it's beautiful, it's colorful, it's vibrant, and the art style, playful animations, and environments look really smooth. The graphics are a somewhat even more polished and reworked version of what we saw in the Insane Trilogy, made to look a little more cartoonish, but that's okay because it's still giving us plenty to look at. There's a huge variety of environments in the game, and I absolutely love some of the new levels. Honestly, I might even consider some to be among my new favorite in the series ever, which is kind of a big deal. From our familiar island home to the prehistoric era, New Orleans inspired city streets, and a futuristic neon city in the snacks dimension, which inverted might as well be Rapture. In this game, each level has 2 versions, the normal run and its inverted counterpart, which you can visit after beating the level normally when you unlock this mode in the main game. Each Rift world features a new style and theme, and along with it, a new inverted theme like echolocation, painting the world, or like I said, underwater. It's insane how vastly different each of these environments becomes in the inverted levels and how it actually changes the gameplay. But Crash has never been just about visuals, it's also about that really awesome soundtrack as well. Crash 4 doesn't disappoint. It revitalizes some of the older tracks and brings a few new beats to the table as well. Its fun music and great sound design enhance every little movement and give this game a lot of its character and that classic Crash vibe that's super essential. I paused at least once whenever I entered a new Quantum Rift world just to soak in all of these amazing sights and sounds, and even noticed a lot of little Easter eggs and cool details along the way. Chased by dinosaurs in a lush jungle, making my way off of an alien planet, and being rescued from pirates. The creativity of Crash has always been so fun and immersive, and Crash 4 reminds me of that in force. As a kid, I couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the story of a platformer game like Crash. I was too busy drinking Hugs juice in those little bottles, hopped up on sugar, and dying millions of times. But now, I'm an adult. I can sip on wine and think deeply about the complexities of how a being such as Crash Bandicoot has come into existence and whether or not his life is just constant torture while I die millions of times. So what does Crash offer in this department? Because I'm sure a lot of you have doubts or probably don't even care. Something you don't typically see a whole lot of in platformer games is a good, decent backstory. And if you didn't know, the Crash series has always had a pretty decent backstory. I recommend checking out this video if you really want to know more about the history of Crash and the game's lore. However, this game dishes everything story-wise past the first 3 games, meaning this story picks up directly after Warped from 1998 and is set 12 years in the future as a nod to the long wait that we experienced ourselves. Here's the plot. After 12 years, Dr. Entropy and Dr. Cortex finally find a way to break free from their dimensional prison by sacrificing Uka Uka and tearing quantum rifts throughout space and time. Entropy wants to rule all of space-time by recreating the universe and becoming a god, and is willing to, spoilers, betray Cortex, team up with a gender-swapped version of himself from a different universe, and maybe even have sex with himself.
Ah. Barf.
It's not clear. Now, of course, being the unlucky marsupial that he is, Crash is dragged into this by Aku Aku to save the day because now every timeline is in danger. You have to collect 4 masks of power to close the quantum rifts before entropy tears apart the universe. You travel from dimensional rift to dimensional rift, taking down familiar boss foes in really fun fights and collecting the masks and gaining new powers. Now, I think at times it's downright formulaic, and when you get real, it's mostly predictable, but more of something that works isn't necessarily a bad thing. By far, the coolest part of the story was meeting characters like the alternate universe Tawna, who is Crash's ex, who comes from a universe where Crash and Coco are already dead, and teaming up with some unlikely enemies like Dingodile and, spoilers, Cortex himself. The relationships and interactions between the characters are kind of interesting and brings them to life in a good cartoon kind of way. Unfortunately, it just suffers from being too cheesy. It's just another story of defeating dumb bad guys, forming a short alliance, and then betrayed once again, which honestly failed to be extremely compelling, but despite the main objective being stale, I found the game manages to recoup itself by having some really fun cutscenes, and sometimes even making some really adult jokes that caught me off guard and made me laugh or at least exhale sharply from my nostrils. So overall, it's a pretty balanced experience with some good funnies, lots of charm, interesting backstory, and a couple of surprises. Not too shabby. I welcome the attention to the story.
Dingo's Diner. Health and safety rated D. For delicious.
Warning, D is a failing sanitation grade and does not stand for delicious.
Now let's talk about the gameplay, which is always the most important part of any game because we're talking about games. Honestly, I was worried that when they announced this title, it was going to be watered down and the soul of the original 3 games just wasn't going to be there. But as I saw more and more, I couldn't help but feel like I was actually going to be excited for this game, and it seemed like a pretty good reboot, so I began to get hyped. Luckily, I was right to be hyped, and I gotta commend Toys for Bob here and say that this game feels damn good and preserves exactly what the first 3 games developed by Naughty Dog had going for them. Let's just start simple with the basic objectives of this game. Crash has always been structured like this. There's a large world with multiple smaller hub worlds that have their own themes, and each of these worlds has about 3 to 4 levels, with the objectives of each level being to destroy the boxes, to collect the gems and the Wumpa fruits, to gain lives and make it to the next level and progress by beating a boss. The series has always gotten creative of how it's done this, however, and is well known for being a platformer with what they used to jokingly call the Sonic's ass in and out camera. Oh yeah. Crash 4 stays true to this and gets even more creative while bringing us some familiar feeling level design and mechanics. It feels really good to just move around and jump in this game, and that was actually the first thing I noticed. It was really sharp and responsive. I really love the enhanced shadow on the ground, really making it easier to gain perspective of where I was actually going to land. Every movement, animation, and environmental hazard were synced up really well, and when you get an area mapped out and nail a really big platforming sequence and hit that next checkpoint, it feels really good because some of these levels are pretty long. The sweet, buttery smooth double jump, the new rail riding, rope swinging, wall running, and the 4 mass mechanics like gravity swap, slowing down time, alternating reality, and this spinning thing. Look at them go. Give you plenty of things to master and are paced throughout the game really well. There's lots of new to explore and some really crazy platforming sequences chaining all these mechanics together in the late game. I didn't feel like any of them were gimmicks. Everything had a purpose and together left for some really fun levels in this game and overall great level design. As I said before, you also had the inverted versions of each level as well, and the flashback levels, which you unlocked by staying alive long enough in the normal levels to collect these flashback tapes, and featured Crash's morbid origin story in bonus levels. And as if that wasn't enough already, we also saw in the trailers that you'd gain the ability to play as new characters, and they delivered. Tawna is a solo superhero that fights with roundhouse kicks and a whip, kind of like a character from a Marvel Castlevania universe with a little bit of sass. Dingodile, a retired enemy, is helplessly flung around space and time and lends a hand, using a vacuum to suck and blow, which is a lot more fun than it sounds if it didn't sound fun already. Lastly, we even play as Cortex, with his head dash and jelly platform creating guns that also seem kind of morbid because those things were alive just a second ago and they kind of have faces and organs, and I mean, that's definitely an organ, right? That kind of looks like a stomach. Surprisingly, all this new stuff really complements the game and fits perfectly into the Crash gameplay despite my worries. The game builds its difficulty really well and teaches you a new technique before throwing some really tricky stuff at you, but before long, it's frustrating as hell. Towards the end of the game, it becomes absolute torture. I mean, if it wasn't for the modern checkpoint system, I would have absolutely lost my mind before I even finished this game. And if any of you have finished this game in the retro mode, you have gained true respect.
Scott earned the power of self-respect.
Really, That's an exaggeration. The game feels much more fair than it ever did in the past, but when you get stuck, you get really stuck. And at one point, it was taking me so long to collect all the boxes or save enough lives to just gain some gems at the end level that I gave up on that stuff entirely and just had to focus on simply beating the levels, which made my experience a lot more enjoyable and allowed me to finish the game. It's not impossible, but it's downright frustrating and honestly requires lots of platformer experience or patience. I'll say I'm not the best Crash player, but I know my way around a damn platformer, and by the end of this game, the problem wasn't that it was hard, it's that I was tired. In my opinion, this game is too long. A game like this doesn't need to be long, and honestly, there's an amazing amount of content, like playing the flashback levels, the versus or pass and play mode to play with your friends, and then again, the inverted levels. With all this stuff to do, I'd say the main game being as long as it was is just a double-edged sword, or maybe I suck, and that's why it took me so long, and for you, it wasn't that long and you have no idea what I'm talking about. I don't care. I will say there is tons of replay value here because of this, but only to the most hardcore completionists, because it would be an absolute mountain to complete this game 100%, and I'm probably going to do it. Despite this, however, I'm still impressed with the game and its great level design. Although there was honestly just too much at times, all of it was still really solid. Each world offered its own unique challenges and kept pushing the use of every mechanic until you got to the grand conclusion with boss fights that were just downright awesome. It was difficult, it was long, but it was fresh, and I still think it was good despite failing to compel me once again to really want to finish it, and me kinda having to phone it in for the last two worlds. Let's wrap this review up and let me tell you how I feel straight up. Visually, this game is awesome. It looks good, it offers tons of variety, and the inverted stuff is cool. I don't really prefer the cartoony design over what we saw in the Insane trilogy, but it's still really fun to look at, and I really had no issues with it. Now, with the story, we hit a bit of mixed emotion because I did enjoy it, and it tried much harder this time around, and it delivers something more memorable. However, it's just still a bit cheesy, a bit predictable, and not really interesting enough unless you're just looking for something simple. For gameplay, I'd say again, really mostly positive stuff here, but still, the downsides are there. The game runs you ragged by the end, and any really casual player just looking to have fun might simply be overwhelmed, I imagine. At a certain point, just expect to face some real frustration, because at least I know I did. However, it's not all bad, and with some effort, maybe even a lot of effort sometimes, it feels really rewarding for anyone to get past these hard spots in later levels. It does at least prepare you really adequately before you get there, and gradually ramps up the difficulty very smoothly. Overall, I say this is perfect for nostalgic Crash fans, or for people who really enjoy platformers, or just want a simple, fun adventure game they can play time to time, but just know that you might not finish it if you rage easy, and if you're not in that group of people, or even if you are, I'd say maybe borrow this game, try it out, or see if your friend has it, wait for a sale, really anything, because it's still a slamming value of a game at $60, and I wouldn't mind paying it again, but you might just think of it as a fleeting kind of fling thing and really just revisit this game time to time when you have some spare time on your hands. That's my recommendation. However, you should all just decide for yourselves, and hopefully this video has helped you with that, because that's really the whole reason why we make these videos, is to share our opinions with you guys in the community and just see what you think as well. If you enjoyed it, click like on this video and subscribe to our channel. October is jam-packed with some weekly content coming out. We have some really spooky stuff on the way. Thanks so much for the support again, and see you next time.